First thing to get into, ladies and gentlemen, this is a heartbreaking story. And that is the story of a 16-year-old Swedish girl by the name of Maya Arberg. I hope I'm saying that right. Maya Arberg, or Aberg, however you say it. It's a Swedish girl, so obviously they've got the weird little circle above the A, so I'm not actually sure how to pronounce that. And on September 9th of this year, bear in mind this incident happened September of last year, Sweden's Court of Appeal for Upper Norrland convicted 18-year-old Eritrean quote-unquote refugee Yaziet Mohammed of raping 16-year-old Maya Arberg in a pedestrian tunnel in Skellefteå, I hope I'm saying that right, on September 1st, 2024. Now, why is this important, ladies and gentlemen? Obviously, it's tragic beyond words when a young girl is needlessly subjected to this incident or incidents like it, where, as she's said herself, she said it has, destroyed her. I hate him because he destroyed me. And this is not an isolated incident in Sweden. It's not an isolated incident in the rape capital of Europe now as well, which is the UK. But one thing that makes this particularly alarming, ladies and gentlemen, particularly anger-inducing, is that what happened was the prosecutor, after this came in, after, by the way, they had initially acquitted him, and I'll leave some documents down below, ladies and gentlemen, you can go and read. I'm not going to show them. I'm not going to try and read them myself because they're all in Swedish, and funnily enough, as one guy with limited capacity and very limited time on today's episode, I'm not able to go and translate them. There's no auto-translate button to translate the document into English so that I can read the necessary sections for you. So go and read it down below. If you're able to then translate it and put it in the comments to me, then please do. They, again, after they eventually convicted him as the perpetrator due to evidence such as witness descriptions, the victim recognition of him at school shortly after, and technical data, maybe metadata on his phone or whatever, placing him near the scene, sufficient to prove his guilt beyond reasonable doubt. He was sentenced to 3 years, just 3 years in prison, mind you, in order to pay her 240,000 krona, which is about $23,000 US dollars in damages. I'm not sure what that would be in pounds. You can do the conversion a bit quick. Prosecutor, naturally, saw deportation. Why the hell do we tolerate these disgusting people in our society? Obviously, our government wants them for their vote power. That's what they want. They see them as a voting bloc. That's why they want them here. But the appeals court denied it, ruling that whilst the rape was serious, it did not qualify as an exceptionally serious offence, one that would justify deporting a refugee, quote-unquote refugee again, under Swedish law. It's a military-age man we're talking about, which requires that the crime pose a quote-unquote serious threat to public order and safety. So apparently this incident where a 16-year-old girl was raped in a pedestrian tunnel as she was finishing her McDonald's shift did not qualify as a serious threat to public order and safety. Tells you a lot about the Swedish authorities, the Swedish judiciary as well, doesn't it, ladies and gentlemen? Now you can see that the problem with woke judiciary, problem with activist judges, which, by the way, there's a photo on X, but if you go and look up a photo of this judge, she's reading an anti-fascist, an Antifa book, right? I'm not sure if it's a pamphlet or if it's a specific book. It looks like one of those very large books, right? And she's reading it proudly, smiling at the camera, this judge, right? Clearly showing the problem that we have in all of our countries, in Europe, in Britain, in America, of activist judges. The court's assessment explicitly factored in the nature and the duration of the offence, concluding these did not elevate it to the required threshold. So what they're saying, ladies and gentlemen, is that this 18-year-old Eritrean migrant who had no business being in Sweden in the first place, who raped a 16-year-old girl, cannot be deported and is only sentenced to prison for 3 years and given a fine of $23,000. I'll do the conversion a bit quick for you, ladies and gentlemen, just so you can understand, my British listeners. If I quickly do USD to GBP, it's about 17,000, just over 17,000 pounds, 17,283 pounds at time of recording. Okay. 17,000 pound fine, 3 years in prison, and he doesn't even get deported after raping horrifically raping a 16-year-old girl when he had no business being in the country in the first place. One dissenting judge, a lay judge from the Sweden Democrats Party, argued for deportation, stating that the crime was severe enough and Mohammed's ties to Sweden were not strong enough to prevent it, but the majority overruled. Arberg, now 17, described the attack in media interviews. We've got one of the clips coming up in a moment, ladies and gentlemen, I want to show you. She had just finished a McDonald's shift, missed her bus, and was walking home when Mohammed followed her into a tunnel, took her phone, grabbed her, and raped her despite resistance. She reported it immediately and later spotted him at school, triggering a panic attack. Imagine having to go into school and see the person that just raped you the day after, the day before. Imagine how terrifying that is. How vulnerable you've been made to feel, how weak you've been made to feel, how powerless you've been made to feel. The experience you've had happen to you at 16, you're 17 now, but at 16, then you've got to go back into school, you've got to face that person again. Knowing that, what are the teachers going to do if he decided to do something? If he decided to try and seclude you in a place in the school or whatever, where nobody's looking. The teachers, they wouldn't say anything. They'd be deemed as racist or xenophobic or Islamophobic and all the rest of it, right? So we're seeing here, recently broke, ladies and gentlemen, as well, that a headmaster, and I put out, in my opinion, something that most people would find controversial on X when I said this, recently in the Southport attack, we're talking about racial profiling, quote unquote, and all of this, the headmaster was silenced from raising concerns about Axel Rudakabana because she would have been accused of racial profiling. So what the lesson to be learned from that is, ladies and gentlemen, is I say, quote unquote, racial profiling, because it's nothing to do with racial profiling. It's pattern recognition. It's pure pattern recognition. That pattern recognition, that quote-unquote racial profiling, would have saved 3 families from the absolute worst of atrocities that could ever happen to them. It would have saved even more people from being injured. Would have saved 3 young girls from being slaughtered in one of the worst ways that we've seen. Racial profiling, quote unquote, would have prevented that, or at least would have made it more likely that Southport wouldn't have happened. Do with that what you will. Remigration now. And scorn and shame on all of the news organisations, the BBC and all of the others that tried to say that he was a Welshman. How dare you? How dare you try to associate me and my countrymen with that disgusting scum? How dare you? She told the media, going back to Arberg now, I hate him because he destroyed me. Case fits into broader Swedish trends where rape convictions have doubled over the past decade. I wonder why. A higher rate of prosecutions leading to guilty verdicts in the previous years. In recent years even. So here is a young girl, ladies and gentlemen, speaking to the media. I'm not sure what media organization it is, someone by the name of Noran, I believe it is. Again, she is a 16-year-old girl, 17-year-old girl now, who was raped by an 18-year-old Eritrean migrant and avoided deportation after the court ruled that essentially the rape didn't last long enough and it wasn't severe enough. That's where we are in our supposed enlightened societies nowadays, ladies and gentlemen. We're not deporting foreign rapists because, the rape didn't last that long, so it's quite clearly not that bad. There's no words.
Jag mår fortfarande illa när jag tänker på det. Jag har ju berättat det här 1000 gånger. Speciellt för polisen och när det har varit i tingsrätten. Men jag känner ju fortfarande att det är sjukt jobbigt. Under hela skolåret, förra året, så var jag knappt i skolan. Nu då och då så drömmer jag ju fortfarande mardrömmar om det. Och jag har varit jätterädd att vara ute och gå själv. Så jag går nästan aldrig själv ute nu. Jag bryter fortfarande ihop när jag suttit och pratat om det länge och kommit in på detaljer. Att det blir som att jag återupplever igen och jag känner hans händer på mig. Men som tur så har jag mina jättefina vänner och mina föräldrar som har varit där för mig varenda dag. Nej, det känns så overkligt att det också var för... Jag kommer alltid påverkas någonting av det här. Jag önskar ju verkligen nu när andra tjejer hör det här. Det är också därför jag vill göra det. att de också ska tänka att det är värt att anmäla. Även fast det kanske inte går igenom. Men det kan faktiskt vara värt. För det kan ju också hjälpa en annan tjej.
So what I'll do now is, ladies and gentlemen, a bit quick, is I'll just read you what she was actually saying. Obviously, the subtitles were on there for those of you who are watching on the screen. You'll be able to follow along with everything that she said, but obviously the interview is in Swedish. She started off by saying, I still feel sick. I still feel sick when I think about it. Fast forward this just a little bit. I've told this story 1,000 times, especially to the police and when I have been to the district court, but I still feel that it's really hard. During the whole school year last year, I barely went to school. Now and then, I still dream about it. And that's obviously not dream in a positive sense, ladies and gentlemen. It's dream as in she's reliving the trauma. It's a nightmare. I've seen some horrible things recently that have been put, some horrible trolls that have been putting stuff on Koren, Telford Survivors X page recently. There's some prominent people within political discourse accusing her of just being a right-wing grifter and all of these things. Absolutely disgusting stuff. When she showed a picture of her when she was 12 years old, when she started getting raped, there was a school photo, and people were saying, yeah, oh yeah, and you didn't like it? Oh, that was the in-fashion thing, you know what I mean? And basically trying to hold her culpable as well for being groomed and raped by these Pakistani gangs, right? A lot of them, they like accounts with like one follower or just following one person or whatever. They complete either bot accounts or troll accounts, right? But it's just truly disgusting. It's truly, truly disgusting. It's either, I don't know, maybe it's some kind of farm or algorithm that's created these accounts, or somebody's actually sat down and created that account to say that stuff to somebody who's been through the worst of atrocities, right? No, Koren, for example, if you didn't know, actually has a son from one of these incidents, right? From being groomed and raped by these gangs, right? And she's struggling to take care of, has had no amount of, you know, I don't want to say trouble, because obviously it's her son and she deeply loves him very much. It's deeply courageous what Koren has done in that instance, in my opinion, because a lot of people would have seen that and then held the child accountable for the sins of the father. But no, she chose to bring him into the world and has done her best to try and take care of him. And even in our courts nowadays, you have these disgusting paedophilic gang rapists still being able to access those children. It's a messed up situation. It's a messed up situation. But then she goes on to say, I've been really scared to go out and walk by myself. I'm not surprised. So I almost never go out alone now. I still break down when I sit and talk about it for a long time, especially when I go into the details. It feels like I'm reliving it again, and I feel his hands on me. But luckily, I have my great friends, my parents, who have been there for me every single day. Skip forward just a bit more. I will always be affected by this. I really hope now that other girls hear this. That is also why I want to do it. They should also think that it is worth reporting, even though it might not go through, but it can actually be worth it. It might help another girl. So courageous there, the first thing on her mind afterwards, and why she's speaking to the media and reliving this multiple times, ladies and gentlemen. It's one of the things which you're taught in any kind of safeguarding training, for example, is that if you have a child, for example, that has to recount a traumatic event, you not only make sure that you take down every single thing in their own words exactly as they say it to the best of your ability, but you always try to make sure that you get it on the first try, because they're reliving this every single time they talk about it. They're reliving it. She's choosing to go through the suffering of reliving it over and over again to try and bring this to the media. And then you have the activist judges saying, yeah, we're not even going to get rid of him. After 3 years, you'll probably do 18 months, or 12 months even. He'd be let out within a year and then he'd be free to do the same again. It's disgusting. These people have no respect for us. These people have no respect for us, ladies and gentlemen, as Europeans, as Brits, as white people, whatever, as infidels. Right? They have no respect for us whatsoever. If you enjoyed that clip, then make sure to go on over to the Voice of the Valleys X page at VOT_Valleys on X. We're also on Instagram at Voice of the Valleys. Be sure to like, share, subscribe, comment, all of that good stuff. Thank you so much, and we'll see you again soon. Godspeed.